So I am here and I am live in my window. And I have a lot to talk about today. I mean, a good deal. Got my crackhead computer. I can't go live on it anymore. The minute I try to go live on it, you know what happens. It doesn't shut down, but it won't let me go live. So here we are. I'm doing this from a device instead, which means I have to go back and edit the description and crap later. So last night I did a thing on the righteous gemstones. And it kind of plays into what I want to talk about today. Today is Taco Tuesday, taco being totalitarian, what is my problem today? I swear I haven't been taking drugs, at least not yet. Authoritarian church organization. There you go. I was calling it for the longest time. High demand religious organization without a national charter. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Let me introduce myself. I'm Suzanne Titkemeyer. I used to write a column called No Longer Quivering for a place called Pathos. I did that for 10 years. I'm working on a book as much as this will let me, and about my years in the Quiverful movement and all the crazy things that happen behind the scenes. When you're part of church leadership, you're on worship team or whatever, you get to see how the sausage is made, and it's not always appetizing. So that's how I'm approaching this, and where I'm coming from with a lot of these things is approaching it from the craziest place ever, and a lot of times it's actually kind of funny. And I was giving my introduction, and now my brain has frozen, and you got to see what happens when you have ADD. When you have ADD and you take pain pills. Okay, so physical therapy starts today, so I'm excited. I hope I can get past this. I want the surgery or whatever they have to do to make this go away, because this sucks. So I'm giving him my bona fides. And now we need to talk about, please do not harass anybody I ever talk about, ever. And these are just my opinions. They're my opinions formed by years dealing with this stuff and in recovery. And quite frankly, I'm still in recovery to this day. I did not realize that I was still in recovery until I started doing YouTube and talking about these things instead of just writing about them. And every now and then I get swacked upside the head, and I realize my recovery is not as far along as I would like it to be. Last night was a good example. I finally sat down and watched The Righteous Gemstones, latest episode, season 3, episode 5. And it was a flashback, and all I got was just sad and bummed out, instead of my usual laugh out of The Righteous Gemstones. But that was because there was the greed factor, Y2K, the haves versus the have-nots, and Judy's untreated mental illness that they knew about, and they laughed it off. So it was a lot of stuff to take in that happens to ring my chimes and be right in my wheelhouse. So there you go. And to those who say that the Righteous Gemstones does not have any kind of basis in evangelicalness, you guys are just out to lunch. I'm going to break it down and explain it. So today I'm talking about names. What's in a name, and why am I talking about what's in a name? Well, there's a lot in a name. Yesterday I had a disturbing conversation out in public with somebody. I had a super disturbing conversation with a guy that I met before. I kind of vaguely sort of remember him. He put in the air conditioner in my guest house. If you could look and see, my guest house is just across the yard. It's yellow. So he put in the air conditioning unit for my guest house because it had died last year when I was preparing the guest house for guests. Doesn't it always happen like that? So he showed up and he took care of it for me. And I was very grateful. I'm always grateful to the repair guys here who are efficient, the ones that know what they're doing and they get it done. Get her done. And he was one of those. Well, I saw him in the store yesterday. We went into the store so I could get green onions and celery and a couple other things. And the other things I need to cook to try and feed the husband without making either one of us any more fat than we already are. Ran into this guy, and it's kind of like my husband's talking to him and going, "Hey, I haven't seen you at church my husband goes to in a long time. What happened? Did you start going to church number 2 or church number 1? Or why aren't you going to church number 3 with me any longer?" And this guy, who is Tico, started telling my husband about this wonderful spiritual experience that he was having at this new church in Tamarindo that he started by the name of The River. Now, there's certain names that when I hear a church is named that, I'm automatically going to shrink away and shrivel, and River is one of those. And I found myself kind of triggered and arguing with him and going, "Hey, what you're following is probably not Jesus." Why would I say that? Because I've been through all these crazy moves of the whole non-denominational, evangelical moves of the Holy Spirit, they call it, quotes, that they're calling revivals at places like Asbury and Toronto, where I used to go all the time. Toronto, Pensacola for Brownsville Assemblies of God, up to Toronto for Toronto Airport Christian Fellowship, over to St. Louis for IHOP, all these different places and these different movements that are supposedly revivals that I've talked about before. I've never seen any actual fruit come out of. I believe that the Azusa Street revival was a real deal, but the rest of them, I'm still not convinced. So he starts telling me all about this revival, this move of God they're having and stuff, and I'm just like, talk to the hand. And I'm telling him all the reasons why I think that that's a false thing, and that people show up with that expectation, that desire to want to see something bigger, greater, crazier than what they normally have, and what happens is you end up with bigger, crazier behavior. You end up with some of the things I've seen described as moves of the Spirit that have taken place at places like the Azusa Street Revival. But I'm not 100% sure that whenever those things take place, that it actually is a move of God. I have to see the fruit. I've just reached a point in my life, it's like, show me the fruit. And I'm that way about life and a lot of things now. As you can see, this tree right here is a grapefruit tree. We got no fruit from it last year. The conditions were all wrong. This year, I was out there yesterday gardening, and I found the little pips falling off. So we're going to get buku fruit. So where's the fruit? Just show me the fruit. Show me the fruit of any of these things, and I am a believer in that. But if you don't have fruit, it's just you playing and rolling on the floor and laughing. And it feels good. Yeah, it does. And it's a moment of refreshing you likely need for whatever reason, but to call it a move of God is a bit disingenuous. Just like names like, what all churches have I heard names that they're, Victory Church, Mercy Church, Latter Rain Church. If the church, and not all Victories and not all Mercy churches are that way, but if you see a church and it has an unusual name, and there's a church I'm specifically thinking of in North Carolina, in the Wilmington area, that has changed names again and again and again. They keep trying to make their name sound more and more evangelical friendly, like I think at one point they were The River. And I've seen them as the Vineyard and various others. But just know that if you are thinking about going to a church and someone is approaching you about going to a church and they tell you the name of the church is something unusual like that, it pays to stop and look and see what it is they believe in. After I had my conversation with this guy, my husband said, geez, do you have to argue about religion with everybody? Because he's Mr. Let's get along to get along. After that, I came home and I looked up this newest church plant in Tamarindo, and there's been a pile of church plants that have failed here. Just a buku butt ton of them. This one, they had links to different revival type conferences and revivalists, so they're going on the Evangelical thing where they're doing the whole Holy Spirit laughter, rolling on the floor, dancing, praying in tongues, the whole 9 yards, which, like I said, I have no problem with it if there's fruit. But if there is no fruit, then it's just a time of refreshing for the people who are participating, and they're kind of fooling themselves in some ways. Everybody wants the genuine, but a lot of people are really willing to accept the fake as genuine. That's why names matter. And also names matter in how you define yourself. I was thinking about this one too, because last night after I did my Righteous Gemstones review, I forgot to mention that it's a good example of one thing in particular in Evangelical town. Women, strong women running the family, not the men. Them pretending they're running the family, the men, and the women are actually behind the scenes making it all work, sometimes even out in front. Look at Amy Lee. She is a crucial, critical part of Eli Gemstone's ministry, and she's a co-host with him, which is pretty interesting. And then May, the other lady, she is Eli's sister, and she was running Peter around behind the scenes. So many times in Quiverful, I saw this again and again and again and again. They'd all give lip service to the whole idea of, hey, my husband, I am so submissive to him. He is my head. And then I would see how behind the scenes, how people really were. Like I said, sometimes going to these evangelical churches, if you take a leadership position, it's like watching sausage being made. It's all sweet and wonderful when you're sitting on the pew and going, I love their relationship. They really love the Lord. He's such a strong and righteous leader. She's so submissive and sweet. And then you get behind the scenes with the sausage being made and you're like, holy crap, this is nothing like what they pretend to be. This is common. And I've talked about this before as far as Quiverful, because Quiverful in particular seems to be a movement that's female-driven. Female enslavement in a weird way that is female-driven. Most of the people I've known as part of it, it is the wife dragging the husband into it, and the husband later getting with the program and turning into that petty, tin-plated dictator who's actually undermined by his helpmate, his wife. I've seen that happen so many times. And even, you could see it hardcore in things like the teachings of Lori Alexander, the teachings of Debi Pearl in particular. Those are just two of the more prominent ones I'm throwing out there, where you can see it's the wife is actually driving everything. Debi Pearl has written about managing Michael, all the ways she's had to manage Michael through the years to make him behave. Girl, that is not being submissive. You don't manage your husband. He's not a child. If you are fully submissive, you're like, let him do what he wants to do and you shore up behind him. Unless it's sin, because Debi Pearl has an unusual way of handling crazy sin. She does stuff like, example, in her book, Created to be a Helpmeet, she addresses what you do if your husband, God forbid, essays your own children. You turn him into the police, you cooperate with the police, you see him go through trial and go off to jail, you wave goodbye, you and the children visit him in jail, and then when he comes out, if you have to place your children with another person, you welcome him back with open arms and forgive him and breathe in, breathe out, move on. No! No! And she's saying that's being submissive. One of the things that I've learned the hard way, God does not want you to injure yourself. I'm convinced of it from some of the things that I've seen through the years and my own readings of the words of Jesus. He's not all about, well, I'm going to make you trip and fall and injure yourself to make you turn back to me. No. Jesus doesn't do that. You're thinking of that other guy. So when I read these stories of Michael, Pearl, and Debbie, and Debbie's saying, well, if he does this, your response is this. No. If someone is harming your children, your primary responsibility is to your children, not your husband. If your husband is your boyfriend, your live-in, whatever you want to call him, whatever you want to call your SO, your significant other. If your significant other is harming your children, there should not even be a choice. It should be the children. Don't like divorce, don't think divorce is the right thing, Jesus hates divorce? Fine, don't divorce him. But you don't have to let him back into your life ever again. If you want him to see the children, there are options like going to CPS and having them provide a monitor, and have controlled meets with the children. But only if the children's counselors say that that's an appropriate thing to do. Because it's not going to be appropriate for everyone in every circumstance. But what I'm trying to say is, in the world of Debbie and Lori and so many others, they aren't being so submissive as they're claiming, as they're trying to force everybody else to do. And even if you look, to give an example, Bethany Beall of Girl Defined. If you look at all her reels and all of her YouTubes and all of her content, her new content where she's trying to promote selling courses and making money, being a girl boss, while being submissive to her husband. It's a bunch of malarkey, to borrow the president's word. It's ridiculousness. There's not a thing about what she's doing that's submissive in any way, shape, or form, even while she is promoting submissiveness. So don't let them fool you with the names, because the names do matter. The names, what we call these things, they matter. They matter so much. And they are pulling a bait and switch with so many of these ministries. A bait and switch over everything. And it just gets to be kind of disgusting after a while. You're looking at it going, really? I know you don't really believe that. I can tell by your behavior. Put your money where your mouth is. Make me believe it by actually doing it, and then we'll have a conversation about submissiveness. And submissiveness doesn't mean that you hold every single same thought as your husband. That's one thing they get very wrong. I can tell you from a lifetime of being married, there is no way you're going to hold exactly the same relationship with things as your husband. You just aren't. You're two different people. You're not joined at the hip. You're not some kind of weird Siamese twin now. Right now we're still having discussions about who we think should run for president. We can't even agree on that. He's got a guy that I think is toxic as heck. I've picked nobody yet, and that frustrates him endlessly that I won't rubber stamp his candidate, who probably won't even win the primary. So to say that you're not supposed to vote, and if you vote, you got to vote the way your husband does, you have to think the way the husband does, you have to have the same opinions. No way. I got crab meat in the fridge right now. I'm going to make crab salad. That's what the celery and the green onions were for yesterday. My husband doesn't like crab. Is that going to stop me from making crab salad? Heck no. Heck no. But in a submissive household, it might. It might. Or somebody would be like giving themselves fits over it, going in circles. Say, well, I'll make him what he likes. I like that as a sign. No, if you want that, make it for yourself. Whether you make him something else or not is strictly upon you and him and your relationship and what level his cooking skills are. It's really between you guys. So there's no saying any of this, oh, this is exactly the way it's got to be. No, like I said, that's a bunch of malarkey. So I'll leave you with that. Malarkey, it's a good word. Love you guys. I'm going to go ahead on and go. I've got to get ready for my physical therapy appointment. I'm excited. I want this fixed. I hate this. I'll see you guys later with Righteous Gemstones content.